Just take that
Beautiful.
down for a moment. There we go. Yeah, so we are really excited to have you join us this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are. This is the final of a series that we have brought to our audience. The goal of this was providing more people the opportunity to attend some of the sessions that were at NatGAC this last September in Minneapolis. So this really is a series for access to give those who maybe weren't able to attend this session because there were other sessions at the same time that drew them in, or you just weren't able to attend the conference. And I'm really excited. This one is also really cool because we are three of the four founders of the AI in college admission community. And so you get to hear straight from a few of the experts tonight. We were supposed to have one of our additional advisors, Becky Mulholland, was going to join us. Unfortunately, she is not feeling well. I mean, she's not going to be able to join us, but we still have the content. We're still able to do the presentation with you. You'll see that Q&A box. We will be using that. We won't be using the chat for questions. Just put them in to the Q&A. We're going to have plenty of time for questions. So feel free as we go to add your questions there. So I'm going to hand this over. I think Sebastian's going to get us started here, and I'll let you guys take it away.
Yeah, we'll just do some quick intros and then I'll start sharing my screen. But my name's Sebastian Brown. As Emily mentioned, one of the sort of co-founders of our AICA group, and then I'm also a regional admissions counselor for the University of Oregon, based in the Southern California region. I'll give it to you, Jasmine.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Solomon. I am the Senior Associate Director for Systems on the operations team at NYU, supporting our undergraduate and non-degree applicants as they journey through all of the technical systems we have. And as Emily and Sebastian mentioned already, I'm also one of the leaders for the AI and college admissions group. And if you're a Slate school, you might know me from the Slate community, where I'm an ambassador there. I'll give it back to Sebastian.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get started. So I will start sharing my screen. Okay, wonderful. So, this session on responsible AI and emissions, sort of, I would say like the intermediate level, right? Not quite the entry ground level, just getting started with AI tools, but really for a lot of folks that are maybe dabbled quite a bit and looking to learn a little bit more. One of the great perspectives from Becky in our previous session is as a director and how to navigate this AI space. So we'll be talking a lot about sort of choosing, testing, and launching the various AI tools that are out there. So we'll start with sort of looking at the admissions AI landscape, what's available, and then how to choose and test those different tools, and then talk a little bit also about responsible AI use and compliance, and then really deliver some of those actionable next steps and hopefully giving you tools to start making those big decisions, as contracts are up for renewal in 2026, all of those kinds of things. So again, that's the three of us. We'll also share Becky's information at the end if anyone has any specific questions for her. She is an amazing resource that we want everyone to still have access to. But looking at the AI admissions landscape, and it is, I think, shocking with especially our AICA group. We ourselves were founded just a little over 2 years ago, and how quickly things have changed, whether it's the different types of tools or different vendors. So, of course, there are things like agentic AI, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions about like what is AI versus what is machine learning or what are automated processes. So just for a quick reference, agentic really refers to AI systems that are designed to autonomously perform multiple steps. They are perceiving their environment, they are planning, they are reasoning. They're really sort of that highest caliber of AI where they are being taught something and then rolling with it. And you're not having to continually go back and execute much versus things like LLMs, we're most probably familiar with, very common, like a chat GPT. There's also the generative AI tools. So those are sort of conjuring things up from thin air from the prompts. A lot of things like Dolly or image generation More and more schools, I feel like, are leaning into chatbots and virtual assistants, especially based on their websites or in calling centers. Many in CRM functionality, whether that is something like Slate or some of the others. And the list just sort of keeps going on and on and on, right? So at times it can feel really overwhelming to just even understand where to start. And at least through our AICA group, these are not paid advertisements, but we absolutely love Jeff Neal, who is one of our advisors. He has a fantastic newsletter that really just kind of parses through all of the weeds in what is, emerging or current trends. So definitely recommend a quick shout out to the Technology newsletter if you haven't been signed up for that. And then really starting to think about your position within AI, your ethics, the way that you want to work with the technology, but also with your, college students, whether you are like me on the college side, if you are on the high school side, if you're in IEC, for example, and how you really want to work with folks. So, for example, finding the right tools to accomplish the right tasks. And I think that's one thing that really frustrates a lot of people is they will go to ChatGPT, for example, because it's what they know and love, and then they'll ask it to perform functions that it wasn't really designed to do. It's not its forte. And so you might have more of a collection or a database of AI tools that you're jumping around within instead of finding that sort of one size fits all. So, for example, if you're an independent educational consultant, an IEC, when you're working with your clients, are you the IEC that's really sort of giving them a list and you're doing a lot of that work for your client? Or are you empowering those students to do a lot of the search on their own and you're more guiding them through it? Whatever the answer is your answer. There's no right or wrong necessarily, but if you really support your clients to do that college exploration for themselves, a tool like ESAI, for example, is really built intentionally for that guiding process. Are they looking for, a result right away? As many students in this generation are, well, then something like a ChatGPT might be a little bit more direct going forward. Oh, and thank you, Emily, for linking the newsletter there. Um, so once you start with that initial premise of, okay, well, what are your ethics? What is your approach? You have sort of that base foundational layer. Then that really starts to help you understand and parse through what are the different types of AI tools and what they're designed for. And as you can see, the more and more that you go through, I mean, there are just more and more different vendors to parse through. But one of the tools or some of the things we'll talk about today is how to actually help you find some of these options moving forward. So I'll pass it over to Jasmine to help us find the right AI tools.
All right. Thank you folks so much. And thank you, Sebastian, for that introduction. Just a reminder to please do use the Q&A throughout. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. And so I'm going to start talking about choosing the right AI tool. So as Sebastian mentioned, there are many, many tools out there. And the first step is to really define your AI use case and then select the purpose-built tool. If you are using a general tool, you're going to get a poorer result than if you're using the tool that is meant for that task. A great example of this is image generation. If you're using Adobe Express to generate an image, you're going to get a much better image than if you're using a free version of ChatGPT or Gemini, where just image generation isn't their focus. There are models of Gemini where image generation is the focus, the same for ChatGPT, but again, it's which model are you using and how are you using that tool? So to start this process, you first have to ask some key questions before selecting the AI tool. The first one is, what problem are you trying to solve? And so is this a problem that students or counselors or the admissions team is facing? And then who's going to use the tool to solve it? Again, is it students, counselors, or admissions team, just like Sebastian was talking about? Is it the counselor using the tool to help the student, or is it the student using it themselves? That'll change which tool is correct for it. The second question you're going to ask is, how does AI actually provide a better solution? So AI is not always the right answer. The times when AI is the right answer is often when it can increase efficiency, eliminate a repetitive task, or maybe it's offering 24/7 support in a way that a human staff member can't. And then third, this is something that was Becky's bread and butter, but we'll try to do it justice when we get to it. But this is what are those data privacy and compliance concerns? So even at the beginning, right before you select the AI tool, you have to think about this part of it. What data do I have to input to get out the output that I'm looking for? Is it for protection information, or is it publicly available low risk information? So as an example to walk through this, I'll do that customer service example. Like Sebastian mentioned, many institutions are coming out with chatbots that are customer service tools. The problem is you're getting too many questions in from students than compared to what your staff has the capacity to answer. The solution is an AI chatbot where it can offer that 24/7 support and also eliminate that repetitive task of answering those FAQs. And those FAQs are probably on your website. They're probably in the resources you've handed to students 100 times, but the student wants the answer now. They don't want to click 10 times in your website to get to the right navigation to find it. They want the answer now, and AI is great at spitting it out, the exact answer to the question they just asked. And then for the compliance part, it's really low risk. You're basically feeding it your website, you're feeding it resources that you freely give out to any student who asks. It's not private information, it's the public information about your institution or about your services or about your process. And so now that we have our question settled down and hopefully you have a tool or a use for an AI tool in mind, we've got to think about what solutions are out there. And so for this, there's really two main paths that you can go down. You can either go and look at your current institution's tech stack. I don't think any of us go to work and log in and use one system all day long. We're jumping between our email client, our CRMs, our student information systems. We're all over in the tech space. Virtual meetings, we're on Zoom right now, or you might be a Teams school. So really look at what your institution has in their tech stack, because most products that are out there that are technology based are coming out with AI features. They might be here today, they might be on their roadmap, they might have already been there for a year and a half and you just never used it or tried it out. And then the other path is maybe you look at your institution tech stack and you're like, none of these AI tools are right for me. You would go to a third-party solution and bolt on a new tool to what you have to offer. And so as you're going down these two paths, there's kind of different things to consider for each side. So for with your institution tech stack, look and see what institution-wide AI options you have. If you're a Google school like NYU is, you might have Gemini access and not realize it. If you're a Microsoft school, you might have been given Copilot. You might be a ChatGPT EDU school. And so there's lots of tools out there. You might have Perplexity or Claude, or your institution might have come out with its own AI tool and rebranded it and named it something else. So really look and see what you have. And then, like I said, in that tech stack, look at what those built-in AI features are. Go to the websites of the products you have and see what's in their AI roadmap. It'll be there. It'll tell you what they're offering. And the other thing to think about there is who has the bandwidth for training and maintenance of those institution tech stack tools. So they might have an AI feature, but you might not have anyone on your team who knows how to use that AI feature yet and can train your colleagues on it and train yourself. And so you might need to reach out to the vendor of that tool to be like, hey, it's so cool you came out with this AI feature, but I don't know how to use it. What do I do? And then on the other side, for the third-party solutions, this is where you're looking at external vendor products. So you have to think about new contracts, procurement, vetting them. And then you really got to look at the integration with your tech stack. You don't want to get a new AI tool that doesn't play nice with the tech stack you already have, because then how are you going to connect the data? How are you going to get those inputs into that AI tool to get the output you're looking for? And then also really look at the implementation and training support. AI is new to most of us. Many people are at their very beginning of their AI journey. And so who's going to support the rollout of this product so that people actually know how to use it and how to use it well? And so to illustrate this, I'm going to tell another little story. So this is an NYU story. We are a Zoom school. And one day, Zoom just rolled out an AI companion. It sort of just appeared. It was included in our enterprise license level, and when they rolled it out, the permission was basically everybody gets it. It's on by default. NYU said, hold up, we have not evaluated this. This is a new feature. This is AI. It's got to go through our processes. We have to make sure it's safe and secure before we give this to our community. And so they turned it off. But the cat was out of the bag. People now knew that AI could take their notes. It could email them after their meeting and say, hey, here's a summary. Here's your next steps. This is what you need to do. And so some individuals and some offices went out and looked for third-party AI note takers. And lo and behold, wouldn't you know it, they found a bunch of them. There are a lot of vendors out there that offer this service. And some of them even play really nice with Zoom, and it's a very quick install bolt on. You're done, you think you're great. And so people went out and got these tools and started using them. Meanwhile, our IT department was hard at work. They vetted it, they went through the processes, they checked it. They said, great, Zoom AI Companion has our seal of approval. And not only does it have our seal of approval, but we're turning it back on for all of you at no difference in cost to departments for using this enterprise Zoom tool. And we're supporting it. We're going to have the documentation that you need. We're going to help people know how to use this tool. And so we ended up in a situation where there were some departments who weren't in talks with IT, didn't know that it was coming back, but entered contracts with a third-party vendor that now they don't need, that are just dusty on a shelf, and they're waiting for it to run out or trying to get out of the contract. And so you really have to like talk to your IT colleagues and see what your tech stack has before you invest outwards. Sometimes it's the right answer, but not always. And so I'm going to move on to talking about testing and implementing AI tools. So you have an AI tool, and whether that's one that's already part of your institution tech stack and it's just a new feature in an existing tool or a brand new tool, you need to implement it. And to do that, you want to create a testing framework. So the first part of this is defining what success looks like. What are the key performance indicators? And to go through this testing framework, I'm going to tell you a story about NYU's chatbot. It is our lovely admissions bot. That's its name. If you go to our website, any of our apply page, you will see it pop up in the corner, and its icon is a little friendly robot evoking image. it's, it's sort of abstract art. And so you can interact with it. And so what were our KPIs? So we were rolling out a chatbot and we were like, okay, well, we want to measure how students are interacting with it. What times of day are they interacting with it? What days of the week? How many chats are they having? What are their types of response? Are they coming back and talking to the chatbot again? And how is it impacting our other customer service, our phone calls, our emails? How is this new customer service tool helping us out? And then the next step in implementation, after we had defined our metrics, was to run some controlled experiments. So this is before we released it to the public. We were having our staff and our student staff, especially because we knew students would be the ones using it. So using your own student workers to test it was critically important. Having them interact with the bot behind the scenes before it was public, running multiple scenarios, asking different questions, trying to stump the bot. And for modeling on a prior cohort, when you're doing a customer service example, that's looking at your history of email and phone call interactions. What are those FAQs? Ask the bot those questions and make sure it's answering as you would want your staff to answer. And through this process, we ultimately found out that we needed 3 separate brains because in our office, we support first year enrollment, transfers, and also non-degree. And our student staff would just say, what's the deadline? And the brain in the bot would pick a deadline. It would be a deadline, but it might not be their deadline. And so we figured out that the introductory message had to say which brain it was using essentially and be like, I'm the first year bot or the transfer bot or the non-degree bot, and also help folks navigate to the right one. The brain changes based on which page you're on our website. And so if you're on a first year page, you're getting the first year chatbot. If you're on a transfer bot page, you're getting the transfer chatbot, etc. And that made it much easier for it to give the right deadline when they would ask, because it would know, okay, I'm talking about transfers. If you're spring, it's this, and if you're fall, it's that. Oh, you're talking about first years? Okay, here's your early decision 1, 2, and regular decision. And then the next step is now we're ready to go live. So we've done the testing, we're happy with the results. we're going live. And at this point, you have to do quality assurance. And so you want to make sure that you have a bi-directional data flow set up where you have feedback loops and you are ready to do error checks. And so that really does involve you making sure that the data is being looked at. So we didn't just turn this chatbot on and walk away. We turned it on and then had staff who were our customer service experts looking at the chat logs, reading through the transcripts, looking at the chats that were rated high and seeing what it was doing when it was doing well, and looking at the ones rated low and seeing what those were looking like. And so we went through that process, and you'll notice that this is a loop. It's not a one and done. AI changes too fast for that. And so we went through and we looked at those performance metrics and we looked at new ones that we didn't know we should be tracking because the bot was giving us all this data that we had never had before. And so we looked at successes there. We went behind the scenes in a controlled environment, again, not open to the public, adjusted how many generative responses we had. So generative responses were the ones we were hard coded, or sorry, the responses we hard coded, and then there were generative ones, which were the ones that it was just reading from our website from the sources. And so we found that after about 6 months, we were able to take away a lot of the hard coded responses because both the AI got better and our sources got better. Our websites got better because our customer service experts would say, like, why did the chatbot answer this information? It's outdated, it's wrong. And they could click the source behind the scenes and see, oh, that's because this web page is outdated and wrong. Or it's because these two web pages have conflicting information and it had to make a guess and it chose poorly. And so we were able to clean up our site and make the bot be smarter and better. And so I'm going to go on to talking about the implementation training aspect of this. So as I mentioned before, it's great that AI is out there, but you have to actually teach people how to use it if they're going to successfully engage with it and get the most value out of it. And so for this, at NYU, we have two groups. We have for our Division of Enrollment Management and AI Education Committee, where we're really focused on working on building up our AI literacy and having our staff understand how AI works. So they need to understand how it's generating results and understand the importance of the data inputs and the training of it. So if you put in vague information, you're going to get a vague, unhelpful answer back, or it's going to guess and just guess wrong, like it was doing with the deadlines. And so understanding how much information you need to enter to get a good result, and also understanding the limitations of AI when it's not appropriate to use AI in their work, and when they need to focus on the time AI has saved them to invest in those human skills and using their skills to complete the task at hand. The other side of this is working with AI, and that's something that our group within our admissions office, our AI group, is really focused on, with really helping our team understand the best ways to use it in admissions with hands-on trainings and prompt engineering practice and example use cases. And so we've created a Gemini prompt bank. As I mentioned, we're a Google for Education school, and so we all have Gemini. And in that prompt bank, we can include specific examples of how to use Gemini in their work in an appropriate way. So for example, when folks were getting ready in the spring to plan their fall recruitment, we created a prompt and had it in the prompt bank and shared it out at the staff training on how to set up how to find an appropriate venue for a counselor meal in a city you've never been to. And so the prompt had all sorts of parts where they could fill in the details of which meal it was, how many people, if they needed AV equipment, if they had dietary restrictions, all of those sorts of things. And then it would spit back out a list of 3 restaurants for them to go and check, as opposed to starting from the whole internet of choices and not knowing where to begin to find this venue for this counselor meal that you need to host. And so that was really helpful and well received because a lot of folks don't know how to write a prompt, but when they see one and it's more of a Mad Lib where it's like, fill in here this bit of information, that bit of information, and then it'll spit out the result they want, then they kind of start to learn about what we really mean by what input you're putting in there. If you don't have those and you have any of these products I've talked about, Google has Grow with Google that has some free education resources there. Microsoft for Copilot has Microsoft Learn with free classes on Copilot. OpenAI Academy has free courses for ChatGPT, and LinkedIn Learning has free general courses that cover a wide variety of tools that are out there. So I recommend any of those if you don't have expertise in-house to start your learning journey. And then I'm going to wrap up my section with some common pitfalls to avoid. And so the first is an over-reliance on AI. You really do need feedback loops and error checks and regular audits. AI is not a rotisserie. You cannot set it and forget it. It will burn it down. You need humans there in the loop, making sure that the AI is behaving as you think it should and checking it regularly, both for your most common cases and for those edge cases, because you don't want to release an AI tool and then have it giving bad information to a small subset of the population you serve because you haven't tested it for them. The next thing is a poor implementation. So you really want to leave plenty of time to implement and test, um, and make sure that you're not just testing, but retesting, so that you can really understand how the tool is working. And doing a staged rollout is great if you can. So like if you didn't know, we've had our chatbot at NYU since March of 2024. So it's been over a year. But we just quietly let it appear on our website. We didn't make a big show of it because we wanted to see what the organic traffic was like, the people who were just finding it and asking questions. And that allowed us to really do those deep quality assurance checks in the beginning of really looking at every chat. And now this fall, we're becoming much more vocal about the fact that we have it and we're sharing it in some of our resources more prominently. And next, insufficient training. So truly don't skimp on the training, whether that's your training staff or colleagues or your students on how to use the tool. You really want them to understand how to use AI. Otherwise, they might have a bad experience. They might go to a chatbot, ask it a question, get a bad answer, and then never return. And that's just because they haven't had that prompt engineering practice. So giving them confidence through practice and through real use cases. One of the best ways to engage with an AI tool is to ask it the questions that you get asked commonly. So whatever you're an expert in, whatever you're the subject matter expert in, you know what the answer should be. So ask it those frequently asked questions. You know how to phrase the question. You can play around with it, adjust the prompt until it's giving you the answer you want. And that will really help you learn how to engage with that particular AI tool. All right, so now we're gonna do our best to do Becky justice and talk about responsible AI use and compliance. So for the ethical considerations, one of the key items to consider is external use. So when you're testing a tool that you expect students to use, especially, you want to make sure that you're testing the free version. If you have access to a pro version, that's great. The student who you're asking to use this may not. So you want to make sure you're testing the version, the base version that they would most likely use to do the task that you're asking them to do, that you're instructing them to do, whether that's creating a list of colleges, getting some scholarships, whatever it is that they're supposed to be researching and using it for, use the free version so that you really understand the quality of the response that they're going to get back. And you also want to make sure that you're helping them understand the data piece of like what they should be putting into the input and what they should not be putting into the input. Because with those free versions, it's a lot harder to keep it from using your data to train the model. And so you want to make sure you're doing some education there as well. For internal use, whether that's within your college counseling office or your institution of higher education, you want to think about the workflow automation and the staff roles and processes and job descriptions that go with that. So like you are University of Rhode Island, where Becky works. At NYU, we also do have union staff members. And so there might be some union rules that you need to be aware of before you implement AI and be like, great, I've taken away this task from your job. If that was a key component of their union job description, that might cause some issues. And so you want to make sure that if you work in a place with unions, that you're working with those union stewards and you're understanding how AI is adding into the role and where they, as the subject matter expert, still have a place and how their job description might be slightly adjusted or not adjusted at all with the introduction of this new tool. Another one is to make sure you're establishing those clear purposes for AI usage. So you want those boundaries set up. This goes both to external use if you're having students use it and internally. You want people to understand what data should be put in, what should not be put in, what type of work should be done with AI, and what type of work should not be done with AI. Um, and then again, that audit schedule. It is so important that you're checking how the tool is working and that you're making sure that it's remaining in compliance with the policies that you have. And lastly, data storage. Anytime you introduce new technology that's going to get data inputs, you want to make sure that you have the plan for how the data is coming into the system and how it's going out, and what the retention policy is for that data. And that it's a secure system that if it does need to have FERPA related protected data, that there is FERPA compliance with that system. And so for some regulatory and policy updates, you just want to stay aware of what's out there. I won't try to do her example because she had a very great one that happened with University of Rhode Island, but it was around the different legislations for opt-ins and opt-outs for communication versus with phone calls versus text messages, and if it was a human or AI calling. If you're interested in that, her contact info will be at the end, and you can reach out to her to get all the details about it. But essentially, the main point of this is that you need to make sure that you're aware that there could be differences in requirements if it's a human doing the task and doing the outreach versus if it's AI doing it. And so you want to make sure that you're collecting the right opt-ins for AI to be the one engaging with your students if that's part of your plan. Um, and then you also want to make sure that you're just really documenting the usage of AI. This is something that's coming up a lot in legislation and in compliance is people care deeply about education, and they want to make sure that we are all engaging in it in clear and transparent ways. And so if you are introducing AI into a place where you have not had it before, you want to make sure that you're documenting how AI is being used, how the humans are staying in the loop, and how the process is changing or not changing with this tool being added on, which will help you if you ever do have a compliance review or an audit of your processes. And also just being transparent. If you are using AI, don't be afraid to tell people. We're all using it every day, whether you realize it or not. If you go to Google and Google anything, you're using AI because the first top part of it is an AI summary. So don't be afraid to tell people that you're using it and tell people how you're using it. This just becoming part of our life. At this point, it's like saying that you use a computer. It's synonymous now. So be open about it. And then some actionable next steps, and then we'll take it over to the Q&A. So when you're building your AI implementation plan, make sure that you're connecting with your administration and all the stakeholders. You may have policies that already exist that apply to AI. So maybe AI didn't exist when it was written, but the policy was written broadly about data protection or data privacy, and it will apply to AI tools. So make sure you know what is affecting your institution or your district. Make sure that you do define those KPIs and you have measurable outcomes so that you can support either continuing or discontinuing the use of AI in that process. And that you have all the stakeholders engaged when you're rolling out AI tools. As I mentioned before, like we had our student staff testing it, knowing that students were who was going to ultimately use the tool. So if students are going to use it, they're a stakeholder and you want them involved as you're rolling out and selecting this AI tool. If it's staff, if it's faculty, whoever it is who's going to use it, make sure you get their engagement, and also any IT colleagues that you expect to support this new AI tool. Make sure that they're involved as well. And then auditing it and maintenance really need to be in alignment with ongoing training. So the tool is evolving. So you don't want to train folks on your new AI tool and then be like, okay, we're done. We trained everybody. We only need to worry about new staff now. You do want to make a regular cadence for training so that folks can learn the new features as they're rolling out. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because we are up to the Q&A.
Awesome. Jasmine, how did you guys choose the tools that you're using now? I mean, a lot of people here in the room were like, this is great. Where do we even start this search? That was one of the questions that came up. So how did you go about that?
Sure. So at NYU, we have that same UGA AI group that's focused on like how we use AI in our work in admissions. One of our tasks, one of the things that we're tasked with is looking at what vendors are out there and what tools they offer, both in our existing tech stack with the features that are being rolled out and new tools, and creating proposals and having those very fun vendor meetings that everybody loves to learn about their product and their sales pitch. Um, so it's really just like making sure that you're actually engaging in the marketplace. Like nobody loves a vendor meeting. Nobody. We all know that. But things are changing rapidly, and it's the best way for you to get a demonstration of how tools are working. Um, Going to conferences and going to the vendor area there and talking to folks and getting those live demos is another great option. Take, a stack of business cards from somebody you don't like and drop them. And I'm joking, don't do that. But yeah, it's really just like being out there and looking. I will say also that the newsletter that Sebastian mentioned at the beginning, Jeff's newsletter, he's always featuring new technologies, and new vendors that are out there. So that's a great one, a great way to start exposing yourself to like what's in the marketplace and what's out there that you could start demoing.
Mhm. I think this is a good moment to plug our first webinars for 2026 because we're actually doing two of them that are going to be very focused on tools. The first one, a little bit more focused for college counselors. If there's any counselors tonight, actually, that is the second one, January 16th. We do have that one up on our website. I've included the link to our events page. You can sign up for that one. We are working on the rest of the calendar that should be out in the next couple weeks, but we do have another session planned on the 13th of January. And I'm really excited about this. This is with Brent Benner from the University of Tampa in Florida. He's retired from there, but he implemented their chatbot there and did it very thoughtfully. He's comes from a research background, so he really collected a lot of deep data on how they did that and what worked and what didn't work. So, if you want to hear about how University of Tampa implemented one of these tools and made mistakes along the way and learned from those mistakes and hopefully not have to make them yourself. That would be a great webinar. And again, we don't have the registration for the January 13 event up yet, but that will be up before you go on break, before the holiday break there. Jasmine, you again mentioned your AI group that you have. And I know there's people in the room that says, "Ooh, I wish my office had an AI group." Is that something specific to your office? And can you tell us how did you go about creating that group? And did that cost, was there a lot of cost involved in that or kind of how did you do that? And then as a follow-up, Sebastian, I'd love to hear about if your office has anything similar or kind of how those decisions are made within your office.
Sure. So for, I would say the first like 9 months of my AA journey, I was alone at sea without a group. Um, and I think that's common for a lot of folks to just kind of be like, oh, this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I want to learn about. But I don't have like a structure for it. But then thankfully, our leadership got very interested in AI at our institution, and specifically our VP for enrollment management got very interested in it. And so then there was sort of this like groundswell of support. And so how we formed the undergraduate admissions AI group, which is just for our department, is very sneaky. I highly recommend it. We sent out a general survey that was just asking about where people were in their AI journey and if they were interested in it and if they wanted to learn more. And the people who were all the way at one end of the Likert scale saying, yes, I'm very interested. Yes, I want to learn more. Congratulations, you're on the new undergraduate admissions AI committee. And guess what you get to help me do? Go to vendor meetings, and also make the prompt bank and do all that extra sort of stuff. So we didn't put in it that it was to form a committee, because then, of course, no, everybody would have been like dead center, like I'm neutral about this. no way you're picking me for more work. But by just having to be more general about your interest, it was easy to identify the folks on different teams. And we do purposely have that committee have folks from operations, our counseling team, and all of the different campuses that we represent so that we have a good user base that they can represent and come up with good use cases for. On the other side, we have our is the division-wide group for all of enrollment management, which is the AI education committee. That was another sneaky survey that I fell for. So, turnabout's fair play. They got me. And that one was the same thing where it was our VP wanted to make sure that all of our staff were improving their AI literacy and taking advantage of these institution-wide tools that we have at NYU that we're blessed to have with between Gemini and the Zoom AI Companion and many others.
Yeah, at Oregon, I think we've been a little slower to adopt a lot of the AI tools. Part of that just is being a public institution that we have to be really thoughtful about what that means. But one, I think, thinking about like the laws of diffusion of innovation, and I saw that question, Emily, it was like, well, how do you recommend like certain products to folks? And I think one is like you would with a lot of other vendors. If you're able to go to conferences, shop around, ask different questions, really sort of not grill them with the questions, but dive deeper into what is the intent and the purpose of their product, the ethics of the company that you're going to be working with. And then thinking about if you want to be part of, those early adopters and maybe understanding that there are certainly some benefits you could get ahead of the curve. Some of those schools that are working with those early chatbots, like an NYU, where other institutions, we might be okay with sitting back, being a little more patient, letting some of the kinks being worked out, and then taking advantage of those, not the, prototype models, but things that are really sort of fleshed out. And it just sort of depends on what your approach is to that level of innovation within your institution and within your office. I think as AI continues to continually evolve at a really, exponential speed, the longer you wait, the longer you're going to miss, the more you're going to miss out on. But that's just kind of my personal thought on those. And I think what I really appreciate with AI is there's a lot of ways where you can implement small implementations of it without fully diving into the deep end. A lot of folks that I talk to that are sort of nervous about using AI, I always recommend, well, use it for your personal life, right? Start there and kind of slowly chip away at it. Or like with Oregon, we weren't quite ready for, full AI implementation use in like application review. We really want to be honest and true to our students in that holistic review and that human element. And so, we haven't had any AI implementation there, but we recognize we use the stars record, which is sort of some pros and cons in terms of our operation, but also there's a lot of hiccups there. And so when working with stars, they've been able to implement some more of an AI use in transcript evaluation. And that's something that we're really like starting with for this year, seeing how it goes. And if we feel, confident through a lot of the testing and implementation that Jasmine was mentioning, then we may feel more confident in implementing it in other spaces in the future. But if we're not too confident in it, then maybe we'll take a couple steps back and maybe rethink our strategy as we go forward into the future. And that's okay as well.
Mhm. I think one thing that's exciting about the formation of these AI focused groups and admission offices is this is something that you don't need years of experience in your office to be good at. Something that I actually often say is, do you want to learn about how to use AI in your office? Find the newest employees because they're the ones that don't have those processes down yet. They've come to your office, they've, been told what they need to do, but they're the ones that are saying, well, how could I do this in a new or creative way? Their brain isn't mapped as firmly as some of us who have been in the office longer, are. So that's what's kind of exciting. This is an opportunity for often for some of those newer employees who are doing really cool and creative things that you might not just know are going on in your office, and to give them a voice and to bring them out and help educate some of those older, more experienced employees who are just really set in the way that they do certain processes sometimes. But now there might be new and better ways that that can be done. So it's pretty exciting. Jasmine, you mentioned something, and it caught me about the unintended benefits of AI tools. And you gave the example, that your chatbot was implemented and it actually helped you flag kind of all these a number of errors. Was that something that you knew was going to be a byproduct of this tool? Or, I think a lot of times people are really, really concerned that there's going to be these negative, consequences that we're not thinking through. But that really struck me that's actually a positive consequence that came out of implementing this chatbot. And I'm guessing the NYU admission pages are much more solid now after this year plus that you guys have had this. But was that something going into this that you were expecting?
No, it was not. It was a really pleasant surprise. And I will say it started out presenting itself as a problem. It's like, oh, this chatbot's not working. It's giving wrong information. And then we had to step back and say, like, well, if it's giving wrong information, it's because we gave it wrong information. Because the chatbot we use is a closed system one. It's not scouring the website. It didn't grab this from College Confidential, where we all know there's lots of misinformation about schools there, buried in the correct information. And so we're like, okay, if it wasn't scouring the internet and it still came up with the wrong answer, then that means the sources we gave it are wrong. And so it really helped us to like take that step back and be like, okay, AI isn't wrong. It's not like purposefully doing a bad job. It's just a tool. And if you don't know how to use the tool, you're not going to get the right result. And so when you go into a new tool and allow it to tell you how good or how bad your sources currently are, it really does open you to be excited to fix it. I will say that the folks who manage our website were probably a little caught off guard when we started sending them tons of change request tickets because they weren't looped in the process. But once we had a meeting together and like shared like where it was coming from and how we were finding it, then they were very excited about the fact that we had implemented this, that it would help them maintain our website because our website is complicated, like many higher education institution websites are. And so it can get very hard to find information to make sure that everywhere it was mentioned, it was updated. And this tool really helps you make sure you're getting every source fixed, every link, and not just the main page you think of. When you're like, oh, I need to change a deadline. Let me go do it on the main page. And oh, wait, I had to do it on these 6 other pages too.
Yeah, I recently also heard another story from the University of the Pacific up in Stockton, and they had been admitting, a lot of first gen and Pell students, and the students would be super engaged until that point of getting the admission letter. And then they would fall off that engagement and they wouldn't hear from them again. And then, really kind of wondered what was going on there. Why was that happening? How could they engage more with these students? And after implementing a chatbot that they very thoughtfully, implemented to assist these students specifically with questions that would be, more, pointed to answering their needs and offering that to them, 24/7 and also thinking about their parents and how they could get their parents more involved and providing that as a resource. They just instantaneously started noticing those students were continuing that engagement longer. And, it showed, and the results of that were more of those students enrolling because what they found was students would see that admission letter, immediately Google how much was it going to cost them to attend it, see that sticker price, and just get scared away. And so this was a way that they could immediately say, hey, we want to meet with you about financial aid. This is it will start with a chatbot conversation and we can talk to you about what that sticker price means versus what you're actually going to pay. Some of these students, the sticker price was one thing. In the end, the price was going to come down to 5, 6, 7,000 a year for them to pay. But they were missing out on this opportunity because they just never got to the point of understanding how financial aid works. So yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting and useful and amazing resource for students who are oftentimes, getting forgotten. And the exciting thing about this is, with humans, if you have humans at the end of the phone, yes, that's great, but it's harder to kind of evaluate how those conversations went and, what's going on in those conversations. What are the questions that we're getting over and over and over? And as Jasmine said, there were still humans in the loop here, and that was really, really important. These conversations sometimes would get to the point where a human did need to be brought in. But those surface level questions, the really obvious ones, no, you're not going to pay that price that you're seeing online is not the end result. There's a whole lot more that's involved in figuring out your financial aid package. And we could very likely get this to a point that would make it much more possible for you and your family. That kind of level of conversation could happen a lot sooner, happen a lot more often, 10 o'clock at night, 6 in the morning, when parents are available. And then those conversations could get handed over to a human when it gets to that point where it needs to be more specific and more personal. So that was another example I recently heard. Anything else, Jasmine or
Yeah.
Sebastian, that you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to mention since you brought up like the 10 p.m. at night and 6 a.m., I will say it's something that like we hoped for but didn't expect it to be this true in the data is that like when I say our chatbot is used 24/7, I mean it. Like we don't have it's not like a crazy bell curve. Like it's got barely a hump in the middle of it in the middle of the day. If students are using it around the clock every week, we're getting thousands of chats that are coming through. And so it's really has been a game changer because we are seeing that there's this whole group of students whose questions just weren't getting answered. And that now we're able to answer them and answer them quickly. And then there's still many students who are emailing us, who are calling us, who are talking to human representatives, and they're having those deep conversations, but they can have them because the chatbot can take care of all of the easy, what's the deadline one. We don't want people calling to just talk to us for 5 seconds and then they hang up because they had one simple question. That's a waste of everyone's time. We want people calling to have an in-depth 15-minute conversation about a real situation that they're going through and have that easy 5 second interaction on the chatbot.
hmm Yeah, and sometimes they're waiting on hold for 10 or 15 minutes to ask that 1 minute
Simple
question.
question.
Yeah, and that can
Yeah.
be very frustrating, and you can lose students, yeah, in that
Hmm.
way, for sure. I pasted something a little bit too quickly there, but Jasmine had mentioned about being transparent about our usage versus what happened, not being transparent, and that made me think of two examples that we've used several times in presentations. The university, Virginia Tech University, has recently started implementing one of their readers for essays this year for the first year is a one human reader, and they're also using an AI reader. But before they went out to the world and did that, they really wanted to make sure they made it clear what they were doing and the kind of what they did to vet that system before they launched it. They had used it twice behind the scenes, not using it in any decision making, but to see kind of how it operated and how accurate it was. And then they went out and published that in their campus paper and talked. Their dean, Juan Espinosa, talked about that, of how that was, and that was picked up by Forbes. Benner wrote about that. So there was a lot of positive PR that came about before that was ever implemented. Now you will also find some things after the fact of people questioning, should that be the way that we're reviewing essays? But I think if you read that article, it just the first link there just really to me resonated with how you do this in the right way. On the other side of things, we have the way that the University of North Carolina, they were also using an AI, system in their admission reading process, but they were not transparent about that. They did not, and many schools right now, I think, are falling into this bucket. I know quite a few. They're afraid of the perception of what people will think if they, we are an admission office. We're full of humans that are making these decisions, and that's what's important. But behind the scenes, on their reader pages, there are numbers that humans are not generating. And a student actually, and they were doing this before LLMs were out there because this happened actually in 2020. A student asked to review their application and they came across those numbers and weren't sure what they meant. And upon further investigation, they found out it was, an AI tool that was being used to help UNC in that review process. And they immediately took it to Reddit, and it did not come out positively. And there was a lot of negative media around that. And to this day, you still, I still see that as being brought up. So, here's two different paths that you can take. And I just really encourage people to, when you're thinking about your tool, also think about how you get that message out to your community, to the world, of how you are implementing that tool. Just because there's a lot of feelings, many feelings around AI right now, and lots of people, lots of skepticism, and we should all be, thinking about ethical AI use, and definitely, how we talk about the world, talk with the world about how we're implementing these tools is really important. Mhm. Well, thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Jasmine. And also thank you, Becky, who is not here in person, but she did a lot of work towards the content here. And really appreciate, I hope this was useful for our audience. I hope you will join us for future events. We're putting together kind of a full calendar for 2026. Lots of sessions that will be good for counselors, also for enrollment folks. We're also going to be doing our learning circles again in 2026. And those are meant to be small spaces where we can actually all come together and try using AI in different ways and hear from each other about how we are each using AI, or not using AI and want to use AI. So stay tuned for that. We will be it will be out before the end of the year, but we'll also be sending it with our January newsletter that will come at the beginning of next year. So thank you all who've been a part of these webinars throughout this year. We've really been happy with the people that have been joining our community, and look forward to doing a lot more with all of you in this next coming year. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful evening, and also happy holidays, happy New Year. And we might not see you until next year. So take care.